is right there. Well, recently when Parade Magazine did a cover story entitled How Latinos Are Changing America, everybody noticed that our mayor, Julian Castro, was on the cover, and one of those featured in the story, but also featured is a state representative from Texas, Larry Gonzales. He's on our 550 KTSA Newsmaker line. Representative Gonzales, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. It's nice to have, I think this is our first time visiting, so it's good to have you on our show. And congratulations for making Parade Magazine.
Oh, thank you. It was great. I think my mom and dad may have bought an issue or two.
I'll bet. It's all downhill from here now. Now that you've been on Parade.
This is my 15 minutes. I'll bow and exit stage right. So,
you know, I'm curious though. When I read this story, I thought about all of the people featured in it. How did they? What did they say to you when they called up?
Well, they called the Hispanic Republicans of Texas, an organization that I helped form a few years ago, and the HRT, as we call it, sent them my resume and my bio, and they looked it over and said, "Fine, we'll take him." And they flew us up to New York, and it was a fantastic trip and a great dialogue, a great conversation about Latinos and the future of America.
So when somebody approaches you and is interested in you because of your heritage, is that isn't in any way offensive to you, or do you feel like, hey, I don't want to just be known as a Hispanic Republican?
It is the reality, I guess, of where we are. This is my second term in the legislature. I consider myself first and foremost a Republican legislator who happens to be Hispanic, and that's how I've kind of run my business here in the House. But the dynamics of where we are as a country are changing, and people are seeing this a little bit differently now. It's not the world I was raised in. I wasn't taught to see color or to see things like this, but it is what it is. So I'm taking the opportunity to deliver a conservative message from a Hispanic Republican to as many people as I can.
I know this is not a state legislative issue, but you must be watching with interest the way Republicans nationally are trying to recover from the November election, and in particular, do they seem to get it as far as outreach or messaging, and are they on the right track, for example, with this Gang of Eight immigration reform idea?
They do seem to understand a little bit better today. I think that's a very fair statement. It's very, very complicated, and for many in our party, this is a very new dialogue. There are those of us who have been working on this for quite some time, but understanding that this is a new dialogue for a lot of people, and so we're just approaching it from a conservative, business perspective, from an education perspective, and just having to introduce little by little the impact of what it means for our country going forward. And largely, as I go from group to group and give my talk, people are very receptive. I think when you frame it as such, as an education, economic development issue, I think people begin to understand a little bit more where we're coming from.
Marco Rubio is obviously one of the leading lights of the Republican Party nationally. He's really sticking his neck out on this immigration issue, drawing a lot of flack even within his own party, people calling him naive and saying that this is going to blow up in his face. How do you read his strategy here?
Marco Rubio is fantastic. I had the opportunity to meet him a couple of times. I've heard him speak in person several times. He is fantastic. I think at the end of the day, Marco Rubio will be seen as the future of this Republican Party for many reasons, not just being Hispanic, but a leader takes those chances. A leader talks about things that may be a little difficult, and that's what he's doing. He's breaking ground in his conversations and going into an area where people are a little uncomfortable, but I think it has to be done, and I think he's doing a really good job of being pragmatic. You don't have to agree with every single issue that's being discussed. I think what's most important is that it is being discussed. So what I tell people is, be a little patient with the Republican Party on point by point. Let's just celebrate the fact that it's the Republicans who are leading this conversation. And in Texas, the Republican Party passed an immigration guest worker program at the convention. And so little steps, right? But Marco Rubio has done a great job of taking us that much further. And I can at least celebrate the fact that he has the dialogue engaged.
We're talking with State Representative Larry Gonzales on News Talk 550 KTSA. Well, Let me ask you also, while we're kind of kicking around some different topics, about the Republican Party in Texas. Yesterday, Rick Perry said that he's got an arrangement, or an agreement, I guess I should say, from Greg Abbott not to run against him in the 2014 primary if he does run for re-election. How are Republicans going to sort out all these people that are kind of backing up behind Rick Perry?
Isn't it wonderful that we have a whole lot of people to choose from? Qualified, fantastic men and women to choose from. That wasn't the case when I first started 22 years ago in this business. So I think it's wonderful. Everybody's done a very good job in their own right, but there'll be some sorting out needed to be done, no doubt about it, in the next few months. And I'm just happy that we have fantastic candidates to choose from.
Our Mayor Castro has spoken of this, so has Joaquin Castro, that they believe the state of Texas will be purple, if not blue, in a couple of presidential election cycles. And people who say that usually point to the changing demographics, and there's certainly no argument about where the numbers are going. But are those demographics necessarily destined to turn Texas from red to blue?
If there were no efforts by the Republican Party going forward for what we call outreach, or even inreach, quite frankly, inreaching within the party, if that didn't exist, I would think that the mayor and the congressmen are probably right on about a 8 to, they say 6 to 8. I think it's more 8 to 10, quite frankly. But there's a lot of effort within the party to connect with the Hispanic community. I said 20 years ago the best way to do it was to elect some conservative Hispanic Republicans and then have them be the messengers of the party. I wake up 18 years later and it's me, which is fine. But those are kind of the efforts that we're working on. So I think as long as the Republican Party can continue to understand there's a much bigger picture here involved. It isn't just a 6-year picture or a 1-year picture. This is a 10 to 15-year picture. As long as they understand what the bigger picture is that we're working on, I think we can make some really good progress.